Following up on our most recent video, Donald Trump was visibly triggered this morning after both Israel and Iran humiliated him on the global stage by violating his announced ceasefire. And during his engagement with reporters this morning, he took his fury out on the media, publicly lashing out at reporters for simply reporting the fact that the United States can't confirm that it has totally obliterated Iran's nuclear program, despite what Trump has claimed. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, friends, we have several clips to play here. Some of them you've seen before, but again, like Trump really gets mad at reporters for reporting inconvenient facts. We're going to play a couple of those clips, but we're going to do this one in order. Here's the first clip. Trump is furious at Iran and Israel for violating his ceasefire.
I don't think so, but I'm not happy that Israel's going out now. There was one rocket that I guess was fired overboard. It was after the time limit, and it missed its target. And now Israel's going out. These guys got to calm down. It's ridiculous. I didn't like plenty of things I saw yesterday. I didn't like the fact that Israel unloaded right after we made the deal. They didn't have to unload. And I didn't like the fact that the retaliation was very strong. But in all fairness, Israel unloaded a lot. And now I hear Israel just went out because they felt it was violated by one rocket that didn't land anywhere. That's not what we want, I'll tell you. And I'm telling you, I'm not happy about that, Israel, either.
Right. So again, he was pissed because he announced that there would be a ceasefire forever, and it never really got off the ground because both countries were initiating. Israel started it. From what I saw of the reporting, Israel, I think, launched multiple strikes against Tehran, and then Iran responded, and their response killed 4 Israelis, and then Israel was planning a massive counterstrike, but Trump got on the phone and pressured Netanyahu to, reduce it, and so at the very end, Israel attacked a radar installation and then turned their jets around. Okay, but that was what pissed Trump off this morning. Well, it got worse again when when he engaged with reporters from CNN and MSNBC about whether or not his initial military strikes against the nuclear facilities in Iran actually destroyed Iran's nuclear program, because the reporting is indicating that that's not necessarily true.
I think it's been completely demolished. I think the reason we're here is because those pilots, those B-2 pilots, did an unbelievable job. And, you know, the fake news, like CNN in particular, they're trying to say, well, I agree that it was destroyed, but maybe not that destroyed. You know what they're doing? They're really hurting great pilots that put their lives in the line. CNN is scum, and so is MSDNC. They're all, and frankly, the networks aren't much better. It's all fake news, but they should not have done that. Those pilots hit their targets. Those targets were obliterated, and the pilots should be given credit. They're not after the pilots, they're after me. They want to try and demean.
Right. So again, the increasing reporting is coming out that yes, though the pilots, hit their targets, there wasn't enough damage done to totally demolish the nuclear program as Trump promised. And he's getting defensive, and he's visibly pissed. He's already pissed at Israel and Iran for the ceasefire violations, which he's admitted. And now he's lashing out at reporters for asking perfectly reasonable questions. And we'll take a look at some of the updated reporting about whether Iran's nuclear program survived Trump strikes. But one more clip on that score.
That place is demolished. The B-2 pilots did their job. They did it better than anybody could even imagine. They hit late in the evening. It was dark with no moon, and they hit that target with every one of those things, and that place is gone. But when I see CNN all night long, they're trying to say, well, maybe it wasn't really as demolished as we thought. It was demolished. You take a look at the pinpricks, and you see that place is gone. And I will say, I think CNN ought to apologize to the pilots of the B-2s. I think that MSDNC ought to apologize. I think these guys really, these networks and these cable networks are real losers. You really are. You're real losers. You're gutless losers. I say that to CNN because I watch it. I have no choice. I got to watch that garbage. It's all garbage. It's all fake news. But I think CNN is a gutless group of people. And the people that run it, nobody even knows it's been sold so many times. But the people that run it ought to be ashamed. MSDNC, a guy named Brian Roberts, he heads it. He's a disgrace. He's a weak, pathetic disgrace.
Yeah, so like he's losing it. He's having a total friggin' meltdown, right? Just lashing out, frothing at the mouth that people would dare report anything other than it was a total success, the greatest success, some would say, the best success ever. Well, nobody's insulting the pilots, nobody's denigrating the pilots, nobody's doubting their courage or skill. This has nothing to do with the pilots. It has to do with whether or not the targets that they successfully hit were sufficiently damaged, and that we can confirm it to the extent that we can say that the Iran's nuclear program is definitively destroyed. And there's not confirmation of that. As the New York Times reports, officials concede they don't know the fate of Iran's new uranium stockpile. Well, Vice President J.D. Vance and Rafael Grossi, the head of the International Atomic Energy Agency, acknowledged questions about the whereabouts of Iran's stockpile of near-bomb-grade nuclear material. A day after Trump declared that Iran's nuclear program had been completely and totally obliterated by American bunker-busting bombs and a barrage of missiles, the actual state of the program seemed far more murky, with senior officials conceding they did not know the fate of Iran's stockpile of near-bomb-grade uranium. Quote, we are going to work in the coming weeks to ensure that we do something with that fuel, and that's one of the things we're going to have a conversation with the Iranians about, Vice President J.D. Vance told ABC's This Week on Sunday, referring to a batch of uranium sufficient to make 9 or 10 atomic weapons. Nonetheless, he contended that the country's potential to weaponize that fuel had been set back substantially because it no longer had the equipment to turn that fuel into operative weapons. And hey, listen, I don't think anyone is denying the notion that it seems certainly plausible that their ability has been to weaponize that fuel has been substantially set back. That seems pretty plausible based on the evidence that we have, but that's not what Trump is claiming. That's the disconnect, and that's why Trump is pissed, because it's not just reporting CNN, MSNBC, but it's also officials in the Trump administration, including the Vice President of the United States, saying, yeah, we can't definitively state that it's been totally obliterated. That's the problem. The Iranians have made clear that they are not interested in having conversations with the United States, accusing Washington of deceiving Tehran during the last set of negotiations while planning the air attack. Moreover, that stockpile of fuel is now one of the few nuclear bargaining chips in Iranian hands. In a briefing for reporters on Sunday, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth and the new chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Dan Kane, avoided Trump's maximalist claims of success. They said an initial battle damage assessment of all 3 strikes struck by Air Force B-2 bombers and the Navy Tomahawk missiles showed, quote, severe damage and destruction. Again, nobody denies that. That's a perfectly reasonable claim to make, and that's still a success to tout, right? I mean, at least I suppose that you damaged Iran's nuclear program, you set them back. That's something that Trump could easily spin into a success, right? But no, he always has to take it further than what the facts show. Satellite photographs of the primary target, the Fordo uranium enrichment plant that Iran built under a mountain, showed several holes where a dozen 30,000-pound massive ordnance penetrators, one of the largest conventional bombs in the United States arsenal, punched deep holes into the rock. The Israeli military's initial analysis concluded that the site, the target of American and Israeli military planners for more than 26 years, sustained serious damage from the strike but had not been completely destroyed. But there was also evidence, according to 2 Israeli officials and with knowledge of the intelligence, that Iran had moved equipment and uranium from the site in recent days. And there was growing evidence that the Iranians, attuned to Trump's repeated threats to take military action, had removed 400 kilograms, or roughly 880 pounds, of uranium enriched to 60% purity. This is just below the 90% that is usually used in nuclear weapons. That's what people are having doubts about, man, and you are doing nothing to assuage them, nothing to convey or project confidence. As a matter of fact, the fact that you're getting so publicly triggered about this suggests that you doubt deep down that you have done the success you're now claiming to have publicly. And that doesn't do well for your position. There you have it, Donald Trump publicly triggered and lashing out, visibly insecure as regards these, unilateral and potentially illegal military strikes against Iran. And the reports just keep coming in, suggesting that people should have questions indeed. But we'll see what happens. In the meantime, let me know what you think in the comments.